Good evening, everybody, and welcome inside Upon Further Review podcast for October 11th, 2023. I'm Doot, Eric Dutkewicz, alongside the coach, Shannon Griffith. And for the next hour or so, we'll talk a little bit of high school football across Northeast Indiana, look at last week's games, look at this coming week's games, and then also bounce ahead a little bit to sectional action in a couple weeks. Joining us tonight will be Wayne High School wide receiver Jacob Sharon Jr. And later on in the program, we will have Brett Rump from 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. But first, Coach, good evening to you. Different scene out there Friday night with the weather that finally came in, but an interesting game to say the least between New Haven and East Noble up in Kindleville for our 1380 game of the week, and in a lot of ways did not disappoint, and a big one with big NEA implications heading into the last week of the regular season.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a true October night. I guess you could say that was a pretty typical October night with a little bit of rain and mist and cooler temperatures than what we were expected to. And, New Haven was playing with one hand tied behind their back. They didn't have Mylan Graham services, and I think that played a big part of that ball game. When you don't have your top guy on the field, it makes it even a tougher evening overall. And New Haven they just never really got off to a good start. And East Noble's offensive line is really good, probably one of the better ones we've seen this year, outside of maybe the Snyders and the Carrolls. They did a great job controlling the line of scrimmage all night, and they're two-headed monsters at running back that just really dominated from start to go. It was a pretty impressive running game that East Noble was able to unleash against New Haven's defensive front, and they really didn't have an answer for it all night long. And I think a part of that was their offense wasn't up to speed in terms of what they were not able to do, without a Mylan Graham in the picture.
Yeah, and I think for New Haven just being there, obviously when you see Mylan Graham in a walking boot and street clothes, that's the first thing that you see. I think the weather played significance early on. There's some fumbles early on, taking care of the football, and really it limited the passing aspect really from both sides. I mean, East Noble was still able to get the ball down the field a little bit, but I think too that for New Haven, so much of their weaponry, with or without Mylan Graham, is getting the ball to Johnny Washington, getting it to James Hardy the fourth, and even Trey Bates. They never really could get him going either. And so I think East Noble, it was the ground and pound game, like you mentioned, with their running backs, Dylan Crail and Mosley there,
Right.
and all of that. And I think for them, it was one of those things where they got up early, and then that onslaught kind of in the third quarter, New Haven kind of brought it back close again with the fourth quarter, with the touchdown and the onside kick and a touchdown in, I think, 17 seconds. But I think at that point it had become so much where East Noble had gone out so far ahead that a little too late for the Bulldogs there.
Yeah, and like I said, East Noble controlled the line of scrimmages on both sides of the ball pretty much all night long. And then what would look like a play developing for big yards for New Haven, East Noble was able to close it down relatively fast with their secondary, who did a good job all night coming up and making the play, which affected Bates's ability to get going. And then the passing game, he was just off. I mean, he just had an off night throwing the football on Friday night. And part of it, when you lose a wide receiver like Mylan and you're with them all year, you got new guys out there, it throws it off, except for Washington he still had his his couple big plays, but mostly a lot of those throws would have gone to Milan, had he been out there. And so that threw it off. I mean, they had some guys that had some good games. I thought the name's escaping me right now. Is it Stewart, the linebacker number 5? Yeah,
Stewart really kind of, with Milan Graham out.
Yeah.
Stewart came in, and I think he was a big part of that as well.
He was a big part. Not only that, but also in their running game, he was able to help solidify some blocking assignments, and he also made some couple big catches also in the area. But on defense, he made a lot of plays on defense. Here's a kid that's 6'3", 215 pounds. He's a junior, and he was, his presence was felt all night long by East Noble, and he was actually a problem there in the second half for him. It was just one of those games. New Haven, like I said, they were fighting with one hand behind their back the entire night, and East Noble was able, like we said, get out in front and ground it and pound it away, and they had some tremendous long drives of 8, 10, 12 play drives that ultimately led to the victory. But the one that kind of broke it all open was the block punt that they were able to get. And then they kind of let down there in that late third or late in the fourth quarter when New Haven was able to score back-to-back within a 17-second span to get it within 10. But realistically, they weren't going to close the gap with what, even with what time was left. So, that throws that race into a little bit of a quagmire now because you got about two other teams that are vying for a potential tie going into this last week, just like the Summit Athletic Conference is going into a tie. All three of those, if all three of them win out, it goes as a tri-champions in the NE8, and that could potentially what happens in the Summit Athletic Conference if Lures were to lose this Friday night against Homestead. So a lot of meaningful games to be played this week, even though the sack draw was Sunday, and the sectional draw was Sunday.
Some people may want an SAC draw after this year too.
Right. So, you're not going to find any teams looking ahead because there's an opportunity to win championships. And, Snyder's got a big game against a rising Wayne at this point in time that could potentially give them some fits because they've got some abilities in their skill positions to cause some potential problems for Snyder. And then, of course, Lures faces the daunting task to go to Homestead and play Homestead. But again, they're on a streak right now, and they feel like nobody can beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's great, I think, leading into the last week of the regular season is that the SAC can still have a title change. It was not decided in week 2 or week 6, or it's week 9 and coming down to the end. We know Lures has clinched a share, but there's still Snyder has a shot. Carroll still has a shot with the games being played this weekend. If Homestead were to beat Lures on Friday night, we would have a 3-way tie there. And then, of course, in the NE8 now with 3 teams sitting at 5-1 in conference, if East Noble beats, I'm trying to think, they're up their schedule right here. If East Noble beats Belmont, which should happen, and Leo beats DeKalb, which I think would happen, and Huntington North beats New Haven beats Huntington North, which I think would happen. We have conference co-champions. But even if one of those two combinations where two of the, but you still got to play the game that's in front of you. But it's just the way the schedule falls that really for the NE8 side of things, and even Adams Central within the ACAC hosting Woodland to close out the regular season. Favorable matchups for all of those teams and finishing off their conference slates. And Adams
Central is the only one that has a the commanding lead in their conference, that they're already solidified the conference championships, irregardless of what would happen on Friday night when you look at it, because
they've clinched the share.
They'll have the head-to-head on everybody because they've beat Heritage and they beat Belmont. So those are the only two teams that could have, potentially got in the front door had Belmont or had Bluffton beat the AC this last week. But Adams Central right now is probably one of the best within the area again.
Oh, yeah. And we'll talk about the sectionals later. I know the sectionals came out on Sunday. They drew South Adams, that rivalry there. And for them, but I think, and we can talk about that later down the road, I think Adams Central is one of those teams that is so good right now and has been for the last several years that it really doesn't even matter who plays them. I mean, realistically, whether it's South Adams or Madison Grant or once you get it until that regional round or semi-state when it starts to load up for them. But I think and that's an interesting part. But that's just a testament to what Adams Central has been able to do the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. 15 years since Michael Mosser's been there. So it's been a great one as well. So that's a lot of big games this weekend, a lot of things to recap. We'll bring on Brett Rump later on in the show to talk about kind of the lay of the land on all the conferences heading into the final week of the regular season. We mentioned it earlier on the show. One of the games to watch this Friday night will be Wayne when they travel to Southside. And we're pleased to bring on right now one of the star players for the Wayne Generals, Jacob Sharon Jr. Jacob, how are you? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, I know it's been an interesting week for you. I know, you guys heard your sectional assignment getting ready for the end of the regular season too, but also sitting at 5-3, the most wins for this Wayne program in a couple years. Just talk about this Wayne team, kind of the corner you guys have been able to turn in some respects compared to the last couple seasons and where this Wayne Generals program is right now.
Well, first and foremost, I feel like this team is more of a, as Coach Haydock would put it, a Haydock team. Like I feel like all the players from seniors all the way down to the sophomores we have playing have really bought into the Haydock philosophy. What Coach Haydock says all the time is either you can't do it or you won't do it. Either way, you won't play. And all the guys that we have playing right now can do it and will do it.
Yeah. What is it? One of the things Coach Haydock mentioned earlier this season, kind of at the media day and things like that, is this is basically his best wide receiver core he's had in 36 years of coaching. For you, what makes this group so special?
Well, I think it's because we all work so hard, and we all know that things don't come without hard work, and we're always pushing each other to do our best. And we got kind of a little bit of a friendly, like teammate rivalry going. So obviously when one of our guys does something good, we want to cheer him on and do great things for him. But at the same time, we want to be like, okay, now I want to top him so I can be better. And it just keeps us going. And that's why I believe we're as talented as we are.
Sure. And part of that, we're seeing some of the highlights on our video podcast stream here. You play defense as well. A lot of you guys play both ways. That dynamic for you guys, what is that like in practice as far as the focus on offense and then defense, as far as how breaking that up goes?
Well, there are certain days. We have Mondays and Wednesdays that are usually designated for offensive days. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, I obviously go with my offensive position group. And then Tuesdays and a little bit of Thursdays, it's mainly it's defensively oriented. So I have to lock in more on that to try to stop the opponent.
For you, I know for you, it's kind of a comeback season. You went through a pretty significant injury last year. Talk about that bounce back, the work that you've put in off season. I know you're a track star too at Wayne, an SAC champion in the hurdles. And I know that kind of complicated some things there as far as, getting back into the scene. You're 100% healthy now, but just talk about the work that you've put in to bounce back from that devastating injury a year ago.
Well, trying to bounce back from an injury like that is no easy task. Believe me, but, at the same time, I had a great support system with my teammates, athletic trainers, my physical therapist. Like I just had a great cast of supporting people to just help me get through that injury. And I always had to push. I knew this recovery wasn't going to be easy. I knew I was going to have to fight for it, and I fought for every last bit of rehab. And I just thank God that I'm back 100%.
Yeah, Jacob, talk a little bit about your 1-2 punch with Harold Mack, as you guys are both, pretty dominant wide receivers when you have both of you on the field. Do you feel like if one is getting the extra coverage, that you feel like the other one can be the guy that gets open?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I feel like me and Mac are both very talented, but the same goes for our other two wide receivers. If they're trying to key in on me and Mac, we got Deontay and Keyshawn wide open on either side.
Yeah, and this year the new dynamic that Coach Haydock kind of turned over the offense to his son, because of Coach Haydock wanting to take more of the defensive responsibilities. Overall, do you think that's helped your team this year?
I feel like, yeah, because Coach Haydock can focus more on one thing than the other, and he has more people that he can trust to get certain things done. Because we obviously need offense to score points so we can win the game, and we also need a defense to stop the other team from scoring so we can win the game. But yeah, Coach Bo, which is Coach Haydock's son, he's a great coach. He's so smart. He'll draw up stuff that I could have never thought of ever in a million years. So it just shows us like how smart Coach Bo really is.
Did we lose him?
He might.
Yeah,
It
it
looks
looks
like
like
it
he
froze
froze
there
up.
too. He might join us here in just a second here, but Coach, another thing too, and is his ability. He's added some of the running game as well. For him and what they're able to do with the running game. So much of their offense, and he kind of alluded to it with the different play calls that Bo Haydock draws up. Sherwood's son, the new offensive coordinator. Um, you know, that's an important part of it is when you have these playmakers that have the ability to get in the open field and then turn on the jets. When you have a 110-meter hurdle SAC champion that can fly down the field, I mean, that's a benefit to you as well. And I think that really has shown for Wayne this overall this year.
Yeah, and he's also ran the ball some, where he's been in the tailback. I think he's back now.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
Yeah. There you go. It's all good. I love the man cave or wherever you're at, by the way. I got the, pretty good. So we were just talking when you got kicked off there a sec, the running aspect of it too. You do a lot of the things out of the backfield. And you talked about Coach, the offensive coordinator Haydock and being able to implement some different things, some wrinkles. For you to get up in the open field, whether it's passing and to turn on those jets, and how fun has it been for you to get mixed in with all the different wrinkles that he has?
It's definitely a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of hard work because I know with me being the athlete that I am, they're going to demand a lot out of me, which I don't think if they ask me to jump, I just say how high. I don't really think there's a task that they throw at me that I won't be able to handle.
Yeah, Jacob, the other thing I wanted to ask you, as you guys you finish up with Snyder this week, and of course Snyder, has something riding on the line as it pertains to this weekend, being that, they have to win in order for them to at least have a chance to potentially be a co-champ or a tri-champ or however you want to look at it. How's it feel like going into this last game, kind of having a little bit of a spoiler effect in that if you guys can beat Snyder Friday night, that would keep them out of being a co-champ or a tri-champ in the Summit Athletic Conference?
Well, Snyder, obviously a traditionally great program. They have some dogs over there. It's not going to be an easy task by any means, but I feel like Coach Haydock is going to prepare us enough to go in there and have a fighting chance of beating them and knocking them off.
What do you think? What have you learned, or what do you know about Snyder thus far?
They're just a good team. They're really good defensively. They're great at running the ball. I think they're one of the leaders in the SEC in rushing yards. They just got some dogs over there, from Kieron Billingsley to Uriah Buchanan, Brandon Logan. They just have some dogs over there.
The history of this program, you're a junior. You've been in this 3 years. Talk about the growth long term of Wayne football. I think, I see it every week. The teams that go into like the elementary schools and high five the kids coming in, and it seems like, I think Woodland did it one week, and I saw Southside was out one day. But it seems like for you guys, we're like kind of the originators of that, at least this year. For you guys, though, the development into the middle school and getting through to the younger kids, how valuable has that been for Wayne? Not just football, because that, basketball team won SAC a year ago, but Wayne athletics as a whole, how much it's improved in the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, obviously, the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, and we need to encourage them to come out and do extracurricular activities in middle school, high school, so on and so forth for the rest of their lives. And a good way to do that is just going to them and just being like, hey, how's your day going? Good morning. Let's have a great day. Let's have an awesome Friday, because we go to their school on game days. And then just try and, just put a smile on that kid's face, and it makes them want to come out and support. And it shows that, oh, they're doing something out here. Maybe I want to be a part of this when it's their time to be in high school.
Sure. What's next for you? I know you're only a junior, but I'm sure the success you've had on the track, the success you've had in football, has that kind of led to some avenues as far as recruiting and maybe what you want to do in college?
Yeah, a little bit. I've had some schools talk to me, like Western Michigan. I went to Ball State camp over the summer. I got Robert Morris University. They just reached out to me today. So definitely some things have been opening up for me, but at the same time, I'm not too worried about my recruitment yet. I'm just focused on trying to bring back some hardware for my school.
Sure. Well, it's definitely been a great season for the Wayne Generals, sitting at 5-3. I think the most wins probably since 2017, so for 6 years, with some games to play. Obviously, you guys play Snyder on Friday, and then it's looking ahead to sectionals where you guys draw Bishop Dwenger in that, and an opportunity to continue the season as well there throughout October and maybe even into November. And then track season right around the corner and all of that. So real quick, what events do you do in track?
It's kind of like football. They got me doing everything, but my main events are probably 300 hurdles, 4x1, 4x4, and probably the open 4. Like, they just have me doing a lot, which again, they can throw whatever at me. I feel like I can handle it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that's great. And that's great to see that another multi-sport athlete representing their school here in the Fort Wayne area. Well, Jacob, we appreciate you jumping on with us tonight upon further review and catching up with the Wayne Generals and what their season has been. And we're glad to see you back at 100% and really having a great season. And best of luck the rest of the way as you guys finish up the season this week with the regular season and then head into the postseason.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for the good luck wishes. I really do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jacob. That was Jacob Sharon Jr., the wide receiver and defensive back, too, for the Wayne Generals, and also SAC champion in the hurdles there. Coach, impressive young man, somebody that I've gotten to know a little bit through Wayne. His dad works in the athletic department for the Generals, Jake Sr., and he was dealt a tough hand with that injury, and that was one where the broken leg, and they had to come out onto the field with the ambulance and take him off and all of that, and you see that, and it leaves an impression on you. But his ability to bounce back, put together a great season, and really for all these Wayne Generals, the season that they've had, I think they really have benefited from the SAC divisional split.
Oh yeah, no question. And they'll give Snyder fits on Friday just because of the talent that they have on the field that Snyder will have to match up against. and it's never been a game that Snyder is necessarily, put it away early. It's been a dogfight at sometimes. But that being said, no question, Jake is a good kid and, multi-sport athlete, things that he does to improving in his speed with the track stuff. That's going to help him down the road.
Yeah. And of course, great to hear that he's getting some MAC looks and all of that. And I think that will bode well for him. Just a junior. So I expect more from him next year and to close out this year as well. So that was a big part of it as well. So yeah, so Wayne travels to Spooler to face Snyder to close out the regular season on Friday, and then it's on to SAC play, sectional play with Wenger the following week. So not the easiest of schedules for Wayne, but certainly up into it. So very good there. Well, it's just about time to bring on our second guest of the evening here, Coach, and somebody that you and I know pretty well, the voice of high school football from 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Brett Rump joining us now. Brett, good evening to you.
Good evening, guys.
You got your Final Four shirt on in our video feed. You had to represent. That's not a pretty Boilermakers Final Four shirt.
You should be banned from that shirt. With that shirt, it's football season still.
I am representing South Florida proudly.
There you
I
go.
can almost fool you into believing that I'm in my South Florida studios.
That's true.
Are you down south?
Nobody knows.
You never know where he may show up.
Yeah. Well, Rumpy, here we are at week 8, finishing week 8, heading into the last week of the regular season. And I think what really is the headline for this weekend is the NE8 isn't decided at all, really. And it's down to 3, and all 3 could still win. And then the SAC is still got some implications in there too. But this has been a fun regular season, and we've got a big Friday night to close things out.
Yeah, we do. And there's still plenty to be sorted out as far as teams wanting to grab their share. There'll be a lot of teams that will be cheering for somebody else this Friday night because, you'll have a lot of Homestead fans out at Carroll and Snyder this week. Probably Carroll not wanting to admit that they're hoping that Homestead wins. But I think you will actually have plenty of support for the Homestead Spartans against Bishop Luers because Snyder and Carroll, their only hope of sharing any part of that victory bell and an SAC championship lies within the Homestead Spartans since they don't have Luers on their schedule and can't take care of their own business. But now you've got the pressure. We keep assuming that the NE8 is a 3-way tie, but hey, everybody's got to take care of an opponent they're expected to beat in week 9. Anybody could stumble and it could cost them a share of an NE8 championship. So, things have gotten pretty exciting. But if you look at what's ahead in some of the matchups coming up this week, you'd expect all 3 of the teams currently tied for first in the NE8 to be heavy favorites. East Noble and New Haven both at home. By the way, did anybody remember East Noble even playing a road game this year? What was the deal? Did they have like a Alabama schedule where they had everybody at home?
Yeah. Well, and I know the Leo loss was at home. So yeah, they've had
they played Luers, Snyder, Leo, New Haven. They've got Belmont this week, and I think they had one other. So they had plenty of home cooking up there in Kendallville.
They were at DeKalb, at Norwell, and at Columbia City. So yeah, and they close out with a home game as well. So 8 games, 9 games, 6 home games, 3 road games this season for the East Noble.
That is very seldom ever heard of in high school.
those clever dogs up there getting their schedule worked out the way it was. That was good work by Nick David and Luke Amstutz up there in Kendallville.
Yeah.
Or you can look at it the other way and say, well, next year that's a bad job because they have only 6 road games and only 3 home games.
Unless he's got Calipari helping him schedule games, maybe next year there'll be neutral sites,
That's
instead
right.
of having to go to the other.
Last year, 6 road games last year for East Noble.
They're
5-6 they finish. But yeah, this year it's flipped the script, and I mean, really, it's just unheard of, because it's not like it's doing ping ponging back and forth that way each year. It's just the way the schedule fell. But are you surprised? I mean, that these 3 teams are still in it? I mean, there's no clear cut. I mean, the way they beat each other has kind of led to this. But what do we make of having an NE8 race like this coming down to the end of the year?
Didn't we call it from the very beginning of the season? We said that there would be a logjam, that there was no clear-cut favorite. There were a lot of contenders, but they would probably all beat up on each other. And you might end up with as many as 4 teams battling for the top spot when you got to week 9. So I don't think we're surprised by where we're at right now. I thought, we kind of saw a little separation where you had, 4 teams battling at the top. Columbia City has since fallen off. The schedule is kind of stiffened up on the Eagles, and they haven't answered that challenge. But the 3 that are up there at the top, we all thought they had good football teams. I mean, there was a lot of reason to have optimism. All 3 of them, when you look at East Noble, they were bringing back almost their entire roster. When you look at Leo, we knew about Brock Schott and Caden Hurst. And then you have, New Haven with all of their weapons. My goodness, they've got weapons galore. So, the question for New Haven is, would they be consistent enough? Could they defend? And would they be good at the line of scrimmage with their offensive and defensive lines? And they've answered that with a resounding yes this year. So, it's an impressive trio of teams. And I would say that I think, all 3 of those teams could go far in the sectionals, but those dang ping pong balls kind of cost that from happening. So,
yeah, that's kind of one of those sectionals. That's probably got to be one of the most difficult sectionals in the state of Indiana. When you look at it.
Well, and the thing is, you look at the way the brackets are set up.
I know. Yeah.
And you've got basically the strength of the NE8 on the bottom, and you've got the strength of the SAC as far as Class 4A at the top with Dwenger and Wayne. And Dwenger and Wayne will play right off the bat. So one of them is one and done. And then the bottom half of that bracket, East Noble, New Haven. I've been saying since the game ended on Friday, in fact, maybe even before the game ended, that we were going to see a rematch with these 2 teams in the sectional. And I said, the way things work out, it's probably going to be week 1. It's probably going to happen in 2 weeks. And of course, 2 weeks from last Friday is when we're going to see East Noble, New Haven. This time it's going to be at New Haven. And I still don't know exactly the status on Mylan Graham, whether he's going to be available, but obviously that first half against East Noble on Friday, when New Haven fell behind, you could tell there were some chemistry issues in how that offense operated. And those are things you don't expect to see 8 weeks into the season, but there was some mistiming, some communication on some routes. And I think they kind of settled in and they got better as they got into the second half. But I thought we saw how impactful his absence was in that first half when New Haven fell behind. And East Noble then was able to hold on despite those 2 touchdowns in like 17 seconds there at the end that made things kind of interesting.
Yeah, they at that point in time that was over, but it was East Noble just thoroughly dominated the line of scrimmage, and that's going to be something that New Haven's going to have to address heading into the playoffs, is because East Noble really ran what they wanted to run all night and never really had any problems with it until about the latter part of the second half when New Haven started doing some blitzing stuff. But, outside of those 2 conferences, the only conference that we really know who the champion is is once again down in Adams County in the league. Instead of calling it the ACAC, you call it the Adams County
the Adams Central Athletic Conference. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
they've been so dominant, they've named the league after them. But
you're
right, Shannon. We saw that matchup at the line of scrimmage, and that was clearly won by East Noble on Friday night. And one of the things I noticed with that 3-man front that New Haven was running out there, that you could put 3 helmets on those guys, and then when they ran that counter play, when they pulled a guard, he would be able to get to the second level and seal off that second level and seal off that linebacker. Well, you get those East Noble running backs all the way to the third level before they even get touched, and all of a sudden it's 8, 9, 10 yards a carry. And I thought that's what we saw. In a rematch, now that you've seen your defense match up against that offense and you saw what East Noble did to you, I wonder if they'll throw in a wrinkle, maybe show a 4 or 5-man front and say, okay, we're going to line it up this way. You're not going to know exactly, who's coming, who's not coming, and kind of mix it up a little bit and see if Xander Brazel is good enough to beat him through the air. He didn't have to throw very often, but he was pretty impressive when he did.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a fun game. I will, even though it wasn't as close as some of the others we've had, good intensity, a lot at stake. New Haven comes in with that unbeaten record. And that was just a fun game, fun atmosphere to be a part of in Kendallville. And, of course, Monroe knows how to throw a good party on a Friday night, too. And they've been throwing quite a few of them lately. This time they had to take their party on the road to Bluffton. But, that game stayed fairly close, but it seemed like there was never a doubt that Adams Central was on their way to winning. They're just so good on both sides of the football that even if the offense maybe isn't clicking on all cylinders, or you get a defense that's taking something away from them, they have time. They can buy time with that great defense to figure out, because they can get the possessions that they need to make the offensive adjustments to eventually put the points up that end up with a 24-point separation by the time the night's over. And that's just what Adams Central, that's why, where's their weakness? How do you beat them? Because generally every team, you try to find that Achilles heel, something you can take away that maybe makes them vulnerable.
Yeah, right. And, outside of, of that, that conference being kind of sewn up as we go into this last week, 1380 game of the week this week will be the Lures Homestead game. What do you think Lures is going to have to do to win this outright? Now, we haven't had the opportunity to see them this year, but, they've kind of caught fire here the last 3 or 4 weeks where, they've done some things to win some close games and put themselves in a position to have this opportunity Friday. And their biggest competition was probably Northside, just because Northside's athletes versus, Lures. And then you bring in DeWanger the next week, you find a way to win that in overtime. This team right now just seems like they have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. But what do you think they're going to have to do in order to beat a Homestead, just being that Homestead's that higher classification of school? And we could sit here and talk about why that's a lopsided affair.
Well, number one, my alma mater apparently didn't get my memo that you've got to stop Brett Fox. That would be number one. You can't let him run for 400 yards against you. He had a phenomenal game against Concordia, but you've got to contain Fox. You've got to put Homestead into some difficult down and distance situations. If you let Fox run 5, 6, 7 yards every time, there's no sweat, no pressure. They can pass when they want to run a play action pass, and it's difficult to stop. But if you can put them in those 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11 situations, it seems like occasionally White will get a little nervous, can't pull the trigger quite quick enough, tries to escape and scramble, and teams have been able to collapse the pocket on him. But so number one, I think defensively, to keep yourself in the game, you've got to take away Homestead's running game. Number two, I do think they're probably going to have to at some point trust McKenzie to be able to throw the football. He's a guy that started a little bit rough, but as he's gained experience, he's improved, and they've kind of grown more confidence in the passing game, and they've got a couple of really good receivers. Isaac Zay, the wideout, we saw him last year. He's a great target, big target as a wideout. And so, I think they're going to have to be able to have a lot of balance and be able to kind of toss the football around a little bit to be able to consistently move it against Homestead. But I wonder if this, in all reality, Lures has their share, and I wonder where their focus will be come Friday. There's no question that Bishop Lures is setting themselves up for a bigger stage in Class 2A. Do they come with the focus of the SAC title and we don't want to share it? Or do they come with kind of an attitude that, hey, let's not get hurt and be healthy next week when we start our tournament run? If they come and they play with their peak energy and they're focused, they've got a chance, I think, to compete with Homestead. If they don't bring their A game and they get caught peeking ahead, I think Homestead's got a distinct advantage in this one.
Yeah, I mean, we go through this every year, and that's why it's kind of nice in some respects is that you still got that meaningful game on Friday because of what's chasing you from behind. And that's the same way with the NE8 in that regard, because they all have an opportunity to be, tri champs. But yeah, it's a good question when it comes to this time of year. I think we've always wondered, with some schools, when you get into this last week, mindset of coaches and stuff. But I got a suspicion that Coach Lindsay is going to want to win it outright and not give, Carroll and Snyder any opportunity to,
he's not a 15-year-old mind though, or a 16-year-old mind. I mean, there's no doubt. I think coaches want to go out there and compete and win every week. And the other thing you don't want to do is if you let up that you lose your momentum that you've got going into postseason. So I think, Coach Lindsay is going to do everything he can to have his team ready. I'm just saying from a player's perspective, do the players exhale? Remember, they had those two butt whoopings those first 2 weeks, and they came back, and now they've won every single week since. That's put them in a position where they're no worse than a co-champion or tri-champion of the SAC. And to me, they've got a great opportunity here in 2A to really make some noise. And I look at that sectional, and I honestly don't think there's anyone in that sectional. Even Eastside, I think, is going to have a tough time against Lures. Yeah. And that game would be at Lures. So, it's just a question of what Lures' motivation is for the locker room, not necessarily the coaching staff, but it's the locker room where you get the motivation. I think coaches can rah-rah all they want. No offense, Shannon. I'm sure you rah-rah with the best of them. But the reality is, I think the real motivation for teams comes from your senior leadership and from the guys in that locker room that make sure every single teammate looks them in the eye and is ready to play. Yeah. We'll see if Lures has that Friday.
Last question here. And me and Dude have kind of bantered this back and forth all year, but now that the divisions, they went with the divisional alignment this year, and now we've got a potential outright champion, potentially with Lures, without having to play the two other of the best teams in the conference this year. Is there any changes that you would make to the divisional lineup, or it is what it is? They want the two non-conference games, and this is what you're just going to have to live with. that this could happen, and probably will happen if you look at it from the perspective of, like a Lures running the table or a Northside running the table, because each one of these teams is going to have a chance some year that they're not going to have to play a Snyder or a Carroll.
Yeah, and you never know what the schedule is going to bring. I mean, maybe Snyder or Carroll have a down year at some point. I mean, to me, here's the thing. For years and years, everybody wanted the non-conference games. Now those same people are wanting to come back and say, well, Lures, they're getting the advantage. They're not playing Snyder and Carroll. It's like, just shut up already. You can't have both. If you're going to play – If you're going to play two non-conference games, you're going to have to not play two SAC opponents. I think what they did in aligning this so that, a lot of the bigger schools play each other, I think they should. And I have no problem with where we're at right now, because we have to remember, for Lures to be 6-0, they still have to beat three teams on that other side that are all much bigger than them. And Lures is the smallest school on their side. So every team they've got to beat is a bigger classification school. Yep. So don't give me any of this, they were handed a championship because of their schedule. I'll joke about it, but the reality is I don't want to take anything away from Bishop Lures. Everybody they play in the conference is a bigger classification. In fact, you've got 3A, 4A. I mean, you go through their schedule, they got a 6A, a 4A, a 3A, a 5A. I mean, right down the line, everybody's much bigger than them. And hey, they survived that, and they deserve, if they're able to go through that schedule and not have a blemish, I think they deserve to have the SAC championship.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what we've talked about is, look, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's either one or the other. And everybody wants those non-conference games. And to a man, that's what they decided to do. However, this ends up, it is what it is. And it still comes down to win your games and you don't have to worry about this situation. Snyder really lost a game to Homestead that they probably really shouldn't have lost in that Friday night, had it, turned out the way they thought it was going to turn out. But that's why you got to play the teams in front of you each and every week, and hopefully Lures can take care of business on Friday night and finish it up with an undefeated conference record. But we shall see. Unfortunately, I won't be with you Friday. I know that's going to hurt you.
I know. We have to end the season without you, but I figured at some point Friday, Griff, you would get me going on the seeding of the tournament and why it needs to be done, and have my chance to really let loose. But I'll have to save it for another time.
I'll have to tweet at you or something while I'm down in Southern Indiana and get you going. No, I've been looking at some of these brackets already, and I just shake my head.
We've got so much technology. We've got so many ways. I mean, every game is streamed or on the radio. I mean, you get to know these kids. The media coverage is outstanding. We've gotten to a point where, whether it's computerized, whether it's, coaches that put together some kind of vote. And I'm not even saying you have to seed every single team in every single sectional, but I don't think it's fair that you have some of the top teams playing each other in an opening round game. For instance, a South Adams and an Adams Central. There's a lot of teams in there that South Adams obviously would match up much better against than having to play Adams Central right out of the gate. You also have the NHC versus NHC matchups. You have a couple of SAC versus SAC. You might still have those. But my problem is that the regular season should mean something. I mean, whatever. I mean, right now it means absolutely nothing. If we didn't play a regular season, we'd still be having these same teams playing these same teams in the same spots in the bracket. And, I know Friday night I talked to Michael Mosier, the coach of Adams Central, and I agree with him that there's two things. One, the top two teams should be seeded, so they're the top team in each of the half brackets. So, you get number one at the top, number two on the bottom, and then fill in the rest. And then the other thing is, I think through the tournament, and this is something I don't know that it's been discussed enough, but I think through the tournament, home team should be the team that's ranked higher in Sagarin. And I think that if you've earned through the course of your season a higher Sagarin rating than an opponent who pulls off some upset in a sectional or something, I think you still should be rewarded with home games. There's no reason a team should go on the road. What was it? Carroll had to go on the road like 3 straight weeks to open the tournament play last year.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to do that. I mean, Carroll's an undefeated team last year, and they had to go on the road for their opening sectional game, on the road for the sectional championship, and back on the road for a regional. That should not happen. If you've earned it through the season, you should be able to play games in front of your fans and not have to travel. That's my opinion.
Well, and you're right. And I think what Coach Mosier suggests is more logical than anything of declaring a 1 and a 2 of each bracket and going from there, because that would be a lot simpler than trying to seed the whole first round of teams. But hopefully we can only hope. We can only hope.
Or draw the buys first. Draw the buys and say the teams that are, if you have a losing record, you don't. I mean, now I did not see any winless teams get a bye outside of 6 and 5A, which only has everybody gets a bye technically, so to speak. But I mean, when you have a matchup, I think it's that one with West Noble and Lakeland in there where they're on the same side of the bracket, and on the other side, it's like 2 teams that are like 2 and 8 in there, and they're like winner
Knox and West Noble. It meet until sectional. They're both unbeaten.
And I get the idea is supposed to be it's random, and so that's going to happen, so to speak. But man, it's just like,
Well, the one that doesn't make any sense either is Snyder. Northside gets the bye, and Snyder's playing Anderson week 1.
Though, Shannon, I wonder if Coach Tippmann really wants 2 weeks off.
Well, probably not.
I mean that gives you 3 weeks from game to game.
That's true too.
That is a heck of a long break.
Yeah, that's true too, which doesn't help anybody, I guess. So you're probably right in that regard.
Then you got sectional 27 there on the screen with 2 winless teams. I mean, that's the other side of it is too, I think by virtue of everybody making the tournament, which is some ways unique to Indiana, at least in our area, at least in the Midwest, perhaps, everybody makes it in, and there have been times, I mean, look at Concordia, top half that bracket, winless every, I don't know a whole lot about Yorktown, but they can make it through to the sectional championship and face off against Heritage. You have a Concordia Heritage matchup. I'm not so sure that's not a coin flip. I mean, in some ways. There, I said it. Maybe not this year, but I mean, but there have been those times where teams go on a run, and I mean, Belmont winless goes through that NE8 conference, and now they draw Garrett. I think that's a winnable game for a team like Belmont. You know what I'm saying?
We've seen a number of teams that go through the seasons either winless, or I think did Norwell do it once? Belmont did it once. I mean, we've seen teams go winless and make it to a sectional championship just by virtue of favorable matchups.
Right.
And you play in some of these tough conferences like the NE8 and the SAC, and it kind of gives you that opportunity. But, we could go on and on about how these things are all matched up. But what I don't like to see is, before you get to the championship, you're seeing the 2 best teams knocking themselves out, and some, 500 team gets a better bracket and gets all the way to a championship. Because the other thing too, let the kids, that have earned it have a longer season. Why should a team that gets an unfavorable first round matchup have to put up their, Bluffton 6-2? They're taking on Alexandria 7-1. Now, I don't know much about Alexandria, but there's a team that's going to consider their season a real success during the regular season, and one of them is going to be turning in equipment after the very first sectional game. Before Class 5A and 6A even start, you're going to have a really good 2A team that ends up, ends up giving up their equipment, and then you've got that
Blackford
Tipton
and
game.
Tipton. Yeah. And that's, two top 10 teams that could there again, not a whole lot about Alexandria, but conceivably, if they're number 8 in the rankings and Bluffton had been 6, you're looking at a potential for a semi-state matchup in the first round, which that's just the way it goes. But then you look at like Indianapolis Lutheran down here, that they've got a pretty easy path to it, where they've got the bye. They're the number 1 team. They got the bye, and all these teams that, on the top half, the only team that is above, that's really good is at the top half in South Putnam. And then they get the regional winner of, probably in sectional 48 and come out of that. So it is always interesting to see every year. My theory is, if we can have the coaches and the media vote on who the top 10 teams are in each class, then we could probably figure out a way to seed these tournaments. Which that's a whole nother topic. The idea that we can even rank team, like how are Fort Wayne media, no disrespect to them, going to sit there and try to rank Evansville teams? You know what I'm saying? Because
that's where we trust the Sagarin ratings to calculate strength of schedules and the power of each region. But again, the Sagarin does put a number to every team in the state, and it does give you some gauge or some measurement as to which team is rated by the computers to be the better team. And somehow I think that could be used, but we'll live with it for another year, and it does give us some high profile matchups like each week of the tournament. So as far as us doing a game of the week, we don't have to wait until the sectional championship before we get a worthy game. But it still would be nice if you could separate number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, and geography always comes into play too. When you have Wabash and East Side and Lures all together, it's like they probably look at those schedules and go, Lures again.
Well, how do you feel? How do you think Fisher's teams with Fisher's and Hamlin Southeastern feel? They both drew to come to Fort Wayne. So we're going to have.
If you're Hamlin Southeastern playing Northrop, you're probably like, okay. Honestly, and Fisher's is another good 5-3 team. Well, Brett, it was a great to talk to you tonight, and there's always plenty to talk about when it comes to high school football, even though we're at the end of the regular season and conference matchups wrapping up and sectionals on the horizons. And we appreciate you joining us tonight on Upon Further Review. And of course, we will see you out at Friday night at Homestead for the 1380 The Fan Game of the Week as Bishop Lures faces Homestead. Kickoff at 7. Shannon won't be there, even though he's in the graphic, but you will be there. And then Jim and I will be on for 6 o'clock with the pregame show, and then of course the post game at the Coventry Pizza Hut.
I appreciate it, guys. And by the way, if you've got the airbrush people that work like on Instagram and stuff, could you take about 20 pounds off both Rick and I in that graphic?
There you go.
20.
Thanks, guys.
40. See ya.
All right. That was Brett Rump, 1380 The Fan, joining us tonight with lots to talk about. And Coach, we could talk for a lot even more about everything that goes on, but I think it just goes to show that there's still a lot to play for. We've talked about that for weeks now, that the SAC wasn't decided in week 2, and the NE8 has got really good teams that it's come down to 3 what will probably be lopsided games that all 3 of those teams will win, but you never know. Can a DeKalb pull an upset? Can Huntington North get in there? And how fragile is New Haven right now? Because that was not the New Haven we saw. No. What was it, a month ago when we went to John Young Stadium and saw them beat up on DeKalb, and not the New Haven we saw beat Leo by 1 in overtime. And so all these games loom, and I think that's really great. And then you fast forward a week and we have East Noble and New Haven again in a sectional first round game, and the season moves on.
Yeah, and I want to be conscious of our time here because since
Yeah.
the 1380's putting us on, we're probably up against a hard break here. So
Yeah.
In that regard, we're going to take it to the last week of the season. We'll see everybody out at Homestead High School for the Bishop Lures Homestead game. Remember to give us a follow and like on all social media platforms as well as YouTube. And you can catch us at Upon Further Review, SAC.com, where you can catch all of our broadcasts right then, right there. For my man, Eric Dutkewicz, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Good night, everybody.